This is the most popular snowboard stance in the world. 15 degrees on the front foot, negative 15 degrees on the back foot, otherwise known as duck foot. And this stance, although it's so common, actually has some serious downsides and implications for people's riding. So why do people like it? It's because it's exactly the same switch as regular, and this makes it so you can go and ride whatever foot forward, it doesn't really matter. It lets you squat down just like you were going and squatting a squat rack. This gives you a lot of vertical power, so you can come all the way down and all the way up, and your knees naturally come out this way. So people really like this stance because they ride in this stock, steady position. So when they're riding, they're stock, they squat down, and they get plenty of room to expand all the way through. If you want to go and switch your feet, we can now ride exactly the same way, stocky all the time. There's no difference between switch and regular, and this makes it a really popular freestyle stance, and will let you go and start flowing from regular to switch with very little difference. Generally, intermediate and beginner snowboarding is taught that you want to maintain a completely squared, centered position, because this position keeps you able to go and use your shins, push out your hips, and get power. And then being able to transfer and do this straight to switch means you don't need to work on changing your body mechanics. It's a very simple back and forth transition. And simplicity is a good thing. It makes it so there's less to learn, less challenges by the weight, and the combination of being more simple, being more squared, makes it so it's a very beginner friendly entrance into snowboard stances. The issue here is people get really emotionally attached to whatever stance that they have when they're first learning how to snowboard. So they go and set themselves into this beginner friendly duck foot position, and then they're feeling really awkward and don't like transitioning out of it later on when their snowboarding requires it. The reason why this is a more intermediate style is it assumes that you don't want any rotation in your hips or upper body when you're riding. And when I try to go and open my hips with this much of a angled stance towards both ways, it becomes really hard to ride casually with my hips slightly open. And because of this, it's going to make it so I'm less powerful, less control, and what this results in is riding a lot more flat-based. When you're in the squared position, you really need to rely on pushing your knees in, pushing your hips back in order to get edge pressure. And this is only the start of the problems with the stance. In order to demonstrate the limitations of duck foot, I've upped the stance to 18-18. This is the most extreme angles on my snowboard I've ever used, but this is nothing. I've had people tell me that they use 21-21, even sometimes 24-18 on the back foot, and this is going to be problematic just because of how much it's now forcing the knees apart. When we're snowboarding, we don't actually want to be squatting down completely even like this. Instead, we want to have a little bit of twist in our upper body, a little bit of twist in our hips, so when we crouch down, we can crouch down in towards our snowboard. This loads pressure into the toe edge, adds warp into the board, and it lets you hold solid toe edge pressure, switching to heel edge much easier. Where in this position, I'm now so fogged out and need to have a little bit of force behind my legs. Like, here's me trying to fully extend my legs. It's almost impossible. So that's going to make it so I ride a lot more like this. The problem with this is it's going to force me to stay a little bit more flat-based. And if I try to add rotation into my hips to try to get that edge going, my center of balance is too set over the center of my board. It's going to be really hard to grip the snow. And because of this, it makes it so people ride very squared like this, and in order to turn, you start leaning one way, leaning the other. So we're going to drop in, do a run in this, and see how it actually feels. So immediately, my legs are coming out a lot more and pushing it out a lot more. This is making it so I'm feeling like I have less ability to shift towards the tail of my snowboard, and I'm just feeling really box-like. When I try to open my hips in this position, I can still do it, but it's making my 21-inch stance feel like it's a 24-inch stance. As I push my knee in, it's really difficult. So this is going to force me to want to come in and ride more like this, keeping myself more crouched, more bent, because if I try to stand up and twist my hips, I'm really feeling it in my lower back. Switching to switch, yeah, it feels exactly the same, but it's making it so I'm really loading a lot of my weight for my quads. I'm not able to start linking my motions in together. I'm just feeling so stiff and limited. When I try to squat down, my knees are just pulling like this. And this actually can lead into some serious danger. When you're riding with this much bend in each of the legs, it's going to be a lot easier to add strain to your knees. I feel less comfortable riding holding an edge the whole time. In fact, when I try to hold an edge, I'm feeling a little bit of a tweak in my lower back. This is making me want to compensate by pushing my hips out and trying to sort of start riding like this. So, well, everyone's bodies are different, and what stance you should use is going to depend on a lot of factors. Having this exaggerated angle on both your knees is going to be something that's actually dangerous and can lead to not only bad technique, but long-term muscle damage. That's why I don't ride 15-15, I don't ride 18-18. There isn't a single pro snowboarder in the world that uses this much aggression on their angles, and that's just because it limits your range of motion way too much. Alright, we're back to my normal stance. Plus 12 on the front foot, minus 9 on the back foot, and this is the most common stance in a higher level of snowboarding. The reason why it's so nice is it makes it so you can ride with this natural little bit of opening in your hips, and then you can expand into this with your motions. So this way I can go and actually squat down in 3 different directions. I'm squatting down as I'm twisting, pulling, dropping back, so I can get a lot lower while staying a lot more condensed over top of my snowboard while doing it in a quicker motion. So instead of squatting down like this, where my hips need to pull back, my upper body comes down, instead I'm squatting down as I twist, as I push my hips back, and this is letting me go and keep that really nice center of mass over my edge, and that's going to be the platform that I use for all of my more high-level fancy maneuvers. So when just riding, I can go and hold a little bit of toe pressure by having this knee naturally push forward, while also keeping myself in a comfortable enough position to go and get that extra mobility. And then I can easily go and swap into a more squared off position. I just have that little bit of forgiveness that will let me go and hold my toe edge a little bit more casual. And I'll be using this as my foundation to go and expand into bigger motions, to expand into flashes, and really just start carving up the slope. And it's not too big of a deal for a switch foot. So here I don't have the advantages of being able to ride with my hips naturally open, but because the angles aren't too extreme, I can still mostly do it, and it's almost exactly the same. Not quite, but it's well good enough to go and perform any switch riding you need to do. And the reality of the situation is no one's riding switch as much as they are regular footed. So it's way better to go and have your set stance in a way that lets you go and expand what you're good at, expand your movements, and give you that little bit of extra comfortability across the slope. But by no means is this the only valid stance in snowboarding. It's going to change a lot depending on what you want to do, depending on the certain dynamics of your body. But a really good rule for picking your stance, don't let the grand total equal more than 30. So if you have 15 on both feet, that's 30 degrees, that's pushing it. That's the absolute max you want to do. Try to keep your stance underneath at 30. So 9, 12, math, under 30. And in doing so, you'll be able to make sure that your knees are never in too exaggerated of a position, and that's going to make riding a lot easier and a lot more controllable. And if you do want to ride duck foot, just use 12-12. There's a lot of really fantastic snowboarders in the world that are using 12 on both feet, but you're going to see that pros favor having a little bit more angle on the front foot, a little bit less on the back foot, just because it makes riding a little more surfy, a little more casual, and just sort of lets you stand in a more comfy way, well, not putting you in a compromised position. So we don't need to go posy-posy, we don't need to go complete duck foot, we don't need to do anything for stance. But by following these base guidelines, you can ensure that your snowboard will feel a little bit better, a little more flexible, and that will result in being a really good platform for you to go and get your riding better and start building higher level mechanics, and that should make you a way better snowboarder with time. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions about stances, I'll answer them down below.